So it's called Zombies Ate My Neighbors. And it's fun. It is a fun game, I promise. I enjoyed every single time I had to play this game back to back. Finally get to the final stage just to realize I didn't have enough heals or weapons to defeat the final boss without performing some kind of frame-perfect miracle.
They're coming to your neighborhood.
Because that's what you would have done if you casually rented or bought this game when it came out. Way back in 1993.
You would have rented it and been like, damn, I love horror movies. And in this game, I get to kill horror monsters. It's like, I'm in the monster squad. I love it.
I don't believe this.
What could possibly go wrong? How could this be bad? It's 1993 and a whole wave of horror video games is gobbling up the shelves. You have quite the amount of choices to pick from. Splatterhouse 3, Alone in the Dark 2, and Doom were all released this year. And really up to this point, the amount of American video games released that are just direct horror homages and aren't just an incredibly weird movie turned into a video game with little relation to the actual movie was Ghouls, which is quite similar to this game in concept, a side-scrolling teenage platformer where you fight classic horror monsters. But Japanese developers had a pretty big hold on the genre, and would continue to for the rest of the amazing catalog of terror the 90s would give us. I mean, Human Entertainment will go on to make the Clock Tower series, and even they had their own similar game with Monster Party, where you again side-scroll, fight classic horror monsters. Why is this important, you may ask? Well, American developers were incredibly behind the curve gameplay-wise. I mean, the last American horror game that Zombies Ate My Neighbors is basically a spiritual sequel to is its 1987's Maniac Mansion, a landmark game in storytelling, but still stuck at a point-and-click adventure, a very polarizing genre in early gaming. And I'm sure you can remember trying to play the 90s port of it for NES and wondering how the fuck do you get out of the basement when you're caught? I don't know. I still don't know right now. Anyways, that's where LucasArts came in, and well, before it became a total factory for literally any game based off Star Wars or Indiana Jones, there were some horror fans in there trying to capitalize on their love of horror films. But as we've covered in this channel many times, the gap between what the brain wants to interact with and what we want to see in the video game was still very disconnected. And at the high cost, anything that would get you a visual experience anywhere near your horror VHS late night binges, you'd really have to wait for the PlayStation. Unless you owned an Amiga or a PC for like $2,000 to $3,000 at the time, which is probably like $5 now. Really, it was Splatterhouse on its own that cracked any kind of code when it came to gory horror homage visuals, compelling original story, and decent gameplay at this point. Yeah. So the team behind Maniac Mansion decided, let's make a run-and-gun shooter based on horror tropes and see how that does in the market, right? At the very least, it'll cause a stir, as there's literally anything horror-related at this point. But actually, at the same time, the developers were making this game with no promises at all.
Kind of an experimental project because we didn't have a publisher. LucasArts knew they wanted to be in the cartridge game development, but didn't know who was going to actually put this thing out.
Of course, LucasArts isn't EC Comics, and at this time, Lucas Entertainment is a de facto kid-friendly brand, and George Lucas was already having Jar Jar dreams as he was about to start writing the prequel trilogy.
This is the 1st of November, 1994. Today is my first day of writing the new Star Wars series. Ready to go. Nice fresh blocks and pencils. I'm all set. All I need is an idea.
Mr. Comic, just a few more years.
So it took a nod from earlier titles Maniac Mansion and its zany super cartoon sequel Day of the Tentacle. Suddenly, there's damn zombies in the neighborhood. But the real pin in the grenade here was Konami Publishing. I mean, the de facto platformer publisher and definite king of the popular horror gaming genre at this point with Castlevania and Contra.
We didn't have a publisher. when we had about 36 levels of the game done. We went off to the Consumer Electronics Show, and we just put the game on the floor and just let people play it. Eventually settled on Konami, and they were a great partner for that. They added some additional features and things they wanted to see, and we all respected Konami products quite a bit.
What could possibly go wrong? You gotta shoot him, toss plates at him, freeze him, blow him up, throw soda at him, turn into a giant hulking monster and punch them, let gold crosses fly around you, and all manner of anything your teenage monster killing self can find around your neighborhood. And it's your time to defend the hood. And true to the lore of the monsters you're fighting, silverware kills werewolves, holy crosses hurt vampires more, which kind of gets flipped on its head, but we'll get to that later, and etc, etc, etc. Regardless, you can rest assured that you are going to hear some banger tracks played the whole damn time. Or just hear the sound of this clown laughing bouncing around, and no matter how far away you are in the level, you can perfectly hear it. It's absurd. It's interesting to note that the instruction manual completely eschews any mention of the story that sets the game up and just jumps into telling you how the game works. I mean, not to the 14th page, they even mention Dr. Tongue, who's behind the story of the game and the main villain. Also, for some reason, telling you a list of game titles they didn't use for the game. They must have been lonely. Anyways, the story of this game is just that. There's this guy, Dr. Tongue, and somehow he created some of these monsters, and yeah, there isn't a story.
When we started on Zombies, it didn't really have a story. We were big fans of games like Robotron and the old classic arcade games that were just many levels of adventure. When we signed up to work with Konami on publishing it, they requested a story for the game. In the end, it was supposed to be that all these monsters were coming from Dr. Tongue. He was creating them in his lab and sort of unleashing them upon the world. Essentially, it was a story of kids versus monsters. There wasn't the big overarching narrative to the thing.
Isn't a story. No, that's something I found insanely unique to this game, especially in the realm of horror games, which are almost always 90% story, and the story of the game is you playing it, essentially. It's how you interact with it. And that story has chapters. Well, we'll say levels. They're levels. There are 48 of them you have to beat, and 56 total with the bonus stages. It's a lot of levels. Which are just amazing, unique horror tropes, all incredibly unique, just like the genre and films, which are all totally different and not repetitive in any way. Unique. Unique, 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 unique.
Look at these two horror nerds. You think they give a fuck? They're ready to kill some undead, dog.
Which I suppose each level is just a reference to a different horror movie, so that itself that's your story.
It didn't really have a story.
All the zombie references are obviously just George Romero Night of the Living Dead references, Dawn of the Dead, etc. Like, level 2 is Evening of the Dead. The Living Dolls and all the Doll Factory levels, which are just an exact reference to Child's Play 2 and the whole Evil Doll Factory ending of that movie. Me and my brother Chris always thought it was weird the dolls said woo-ha, woo-ha, like Busta Rhymes. I don't know why it's in there. You've got your slashers covered with the Chainsaw Maniacs, the mass killer who is nearly impossible to kill and consistently stalks you. Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween. Which also, funny enough, outside of America, they are lumberjacks with axes instead for some censorship reason. Like, yeah, getting hacked to pieces is really less violent than getting chainsaw gut fucked. People were so weird in the 90s thinking they were making any actual cultural impact with some of the stupid puritanical censorships they were going after. I don't know what they were thinking.
Magistrates ordered their immediate forfeiture.
A solicitor for the Director of Public Prosecutions called the material an extravaganza of gory violence, capable of depraving and corrupting those who watched it.
Then, of course, you've got your run-of-the-mill classic universal monsters like vampires, werewolves, creatures from the Black Lagoon, or Blue Lagoon in this case, and mummies. You know, homages to 50s drive-in horror films like Them with giant ants and the Blob. Martians with the invasion of the saucer men who look literally exactly the same as them, and pod plants, a little hot shop of horrors, I guess, I'm not sure. Then a total left field Dune reference appears with literal sandworms, which act as a sub-boss of the game, but are called snakeoids.
I like snakeoids.
Or maybe it's like a Tremors reference, as they call the worms that in the movie, they call them graboids, so I don't...
Graboids.
Then if you didn't go far enough with that, here's a freaking giant baby you have to fight a few times, and I can't figure out the reference here other than it may have been too sexual to do the 50-foot woman 1958 montage, I guess. And the main boss you fight twice in this game is a giant spider that Dr. Tongue himself transforms into after drinking one of his mystery potions, and easily is the most annoying boss in any video game ever made in the history of gaming. I mean, watching through speedruns and playthroughs, I discovered the best way to defeat him is to use the monster potion and do not move. The potion's duration is based on player movement, so if you just stand in one place, you can punch the spider till nearly it's defeated, and then just do your bidding after that. You wouldn't believe the amount of times I tried to raw dog him with movement and weapons on my first playthroughs, and was finally successful, which led me to my next discovery. You cannot beat this game without having saved a ton of weapons and heals for the last stage. You can't. You absolutely cannot. Unless you think you'll execute like hundreds of frame-perfect moves while you slowly damage the final boss, which is not just gonna happen, buddy. The second spider at the finale of the game has double the amount of health, and if that's not enough, even if you get through him, you gotta fight Dr. Tongue's big freaking tongue blasting floating head. This is where you realize you have to reset to earlier in the game and save your power-ups and heals just for the boss fights. So you can use the passwords you get every few levels, but you do that, you start with nothing. The game does not save your progress. So you can skip a ton of the levels, but you still gotta go find and grind it out in like level 20 to 480 range to keep amassing weapons so you can do anything in the end. And you only get 3 lives to start off with. I mean, you can find them later in the game, but you don't get any continues either, so after that, it's just game over. And I watch so many streamers blow through hours of playing this game and only have some insane RNG monster tap them and blow the entire run. It's outrageous. I legit played this one for a couple weeks compared to much more complex games I've covered, and this one is by far the absolute most frustrating one of them all. I mean, finesse only comes in the game by stacking weapons and using them perfectly when the time comes. You can't just be good. Which, at the end, you find out that the default squirt gun filled with holy water is the most effective weapon against Dr. Tongue's floating head. Explain that one. So you get the most gore out of the entire game here. You gotta blow his head up, save the last survivor, and then in true 90s fashion, no ending, just a screen that it says winner. Great. Then one more level, which is a credits level and actually features a video game George Lucas and the rest of the team who made this game. Apparently you can die in this level too and blow the whole run. Anyways, there's a tentacle from Day of the Tentacle inexplicably in there, and finally the nightmare. It's over. It's over, man. So apparently they were just developing this game on their own and had no publisher. They just made it on the dev dime of LucasArts, and finally Konami puts it out, and it actually does quite well. Obviously, I was a huge horror fan as a kid, but I honestly cannot remember this game evoking any sort of horror memories for me. I think I was too interested in like Splatterhouse and the coming wave of PlayStation survival horrors for this game to even hit my radar. And the marketing and advertising for this game was about as weak-ass as it felt for me to try and look for any of it, because I didn't really find much, and all I remember doing is seeing this in like comic books a little bit when I was a kid a few times. And I mean, there is a sequel. It's made by a third-party team, and it's called Ghoul Patrol, which, funny enough, gives the characters Zeke and Julie more story than you ever wanted in any version of this game, so you have to sift through a shit ton of it. But also, Ghoul Patrol, who just simply licensed the Zombies engine, and eventually decided to put out the game as a sequel to gain eyes, and it expands in the style of Zombies, but they don't really name the levels. So most of all the same old horror references are gone, and it feels pretty detached from the original. It's weird. In the end, just say fuck it and play one of the amazing tracks in this game and just enjoy the ride, man. You just gotta enjoy the ride.
Because anything is possible.